Welcome back. This is the second of your quarantine kettlebell workouts. Hope everyone is staying healthy and relatively happy. I mean, I'm not shooting for the moon here, but I hope you're all well. In this workout, we'll be predominantly working the posterior chain, but as you know, with kettlebells, any movement requires muscle engagement to some degree in all parts of the body to deal with the momentum and inertia involved with moving these heavy weights. That said, most of these movements will require engagement in your hamstrings, gluteals, lower back, hips and core. And if you don't know what that feels like, you will soon enough. Like last week, we work in 5 3-minute rounds and take as long as you need in between. 3 minutes rest for 3 minutes of activity is fine. 1.5 minutes rest is better if you're a bit fitter. Okay. Starting as before with a lighter weight to mobilise the joints, warm up the muscles and get the heart beating. Note that I've written the exercises we're doing in each round on the blackboard for this one. We're beginning with something called a pivot swing. If you remember the Russian swing we did last week, this is basically the same thing, in that you're hinging at the hips and that's where your explosive power is coming from. And even if it is just a cute 4 kilogram pink kettlebell, you still must explode. We're twisting from side to side so that we mobilise the shoulders a bit more, and so that we're not just working in one plane of motion, we're also working the obliques and serratus. I stress again the importance of hinging at the hips. Your legs should not be bending too much. Just move your bum back and that's where all the power is coming from. We'll do this for 1.5 minutes and then move on to the next exercise. Okay, this next move is one of my favourites and staples. If you can, as I'm doing here, try and link the 3 movements fluidly instead of stopping after each one. What we're doing is we're cleaning the weight to our shoulder, squatting down and then pressing it up over our head. For the clean, the kettlebell starts between your legs. You explode up from the hips and you catch it just outside your shoulder. When you're cleaning the weight, it's very important that your knees are over your toes, not caving inwards. If you can't get that deep, that's fine. You don't have to. Just use your power in your hips to force the kettlebell up, or if you want, just bicep curl it up. For the squat, remember again to let your knees track over your toes as you go down and stick to a depth that you're comfortable with. If your knees cave in, if you lean forward instead of sitting back, it's an injury waiting to happen, so please be careful and stick to a depth that's comfortable. For the press, finally, explode up and use the momentum from the squat to carry the weight into a locked position over your head. As I mentioned in the beginning, this workout is predominantly lower body and posterior chain focused. Of course, with kettlebells you're using every muscle group for every movement, but this is our one mainly upper body round. We'll begin lying down. This move is called a pullover. We're going to bridge for this exercise just to add a bit of extra challenge. If you don't want to bridge or you can't bridge, again that's fine. But if you're going to bridge, remember to keep the bridge alive. That means that you don't let your bum drop to the floor. Keep the whole body planked up like that for the 1.5 minutes. The bridge introduces glute engagement, and of course you're moving the weight now in a more unstable position, so you'll be working harder to stabilise. The position of the kettlebell, where you hold it, is the same. If you hold it inverted, as I'm doing here, then the centre of gravity will be a bit farther away from the fulcrum, in this case the shoulders, so you're going to have to work a bit harder to stabilise it. So if you want to adapt this exercise, if it's a bit too hard, just put your bum in the floor and hold the kettlebell the other way up, and don't work in a full range of motion. If you do this on a bench, it's predominantly a chest exercise, but here you'll notice you really have to engage the lats at the bottom and keep them tense, otherwise the body will collapse. And then the weight's not heavy, so you're not using too much strength in your chest to pull it up. My bridge is a bit far out here. If you want to move your heels a bit closer to your body, that's fine. Okay, the next exercise is called boxer punches. They bear very little resemblance to real boxer punches. What we're doing is a bicep curl and a press, a very strict press. So you want to avoid momentum. You curl the kettlebell up to your face, press. Don't swing the kettlebell, and definitely do not lean back. Just use the biceps to curl it up, and then press. If you notice, I'm pivoting on my back toe and then planting off my front foot. That way the kettlebell moves up in a nice straight line, so everything's very stable. Don't swing from side to side. For this movement, you're turning in a controlled pattern to exhaust your small muscle groups, mainly the shoulders. We're not working with huge muscle groups yet. That's for next round. Okay, if you don't know, then you will shortly. This is what a Romanian deadlift is, sort of. We're using the kettlebell, so range of motion will be a bit short. I'm going to begin by deadlifting it up as normal. Again, I'm using a kettlebell here. So as I say, my range of motion will be a bit short, but all of these points apply, whether you're lifting with a sandbag, or a barbell, or you're lifting up Tim Keogh, or whatever apparatus you have at hand. This is predominantly a hamstring exercise, even though the hamstrings aren't the prime mover in the weights. That means that they're not the muscles that are really doing all the moving. That's the glutes and the hips. Just turning forward so you can see from a different angle. The reason it works the hamstrings is because they're keeping tension and carrying the load of the weight in conjunction with the upper back. Your bum is doing the moving, but your lower back and hamstring are the engine. Basically, if you feel a long stretch in your hamstrings at the bottom of each rep, then you're doing it right. The back should be locked up tight, so draw your shoulders back and again, try and imagine that pencil between your spine and you're trying to pinch it and keep it there. I tell my clients, try and imagine your body as like a crane for this movement. It's the big strong cable in the pillar of the crane that's taking all the tension and doing all the work, not the arm that stretches out. This next move is called a good morning. We do it with a lighter kettlebell. With this exercise, we're basically repeating the same movement in the same kinetic chain, but because we're holding the kettlebell in a different position, tight against the chest, it's going to require a bit more lower back strength to move and a bit less hamstring to keep tension. Again, it's very important that your back doesn't round. To ensure this, draw your upper arms close to your body. If they're touching your rib cage, then chances are that your back is locked up and you're doing it properly. If they're flaring out and disconnected, chances are your back is rounding. The other clue that you might not be getting the form right is that your spine will hurt like a son of a bitch, and then you should just stop doing the exercise until you learn how to do it right. Or, again, just work in a shorter range of motion. If you can't get that down that far, then it's fine. Just come to 45 degrees instead of parallel. Right, round 4. This first one is called a suitcase row, aptly named because it sort of looks like you're bending over to pick up a suitcase, but instead you start rowing it like a complete idiot with your hand out at the side. I mean, this is not how you pick up a suitcase. That's just how you exhaust your rhomboids for no purpose whatsoever, or as we call it, exercise. Draw your elbow close to your body. If the elbow's flaring out, then you're rowing in a position that's going to impinge your shoulder. Also, you're using too much biceps. If you're confused, the reason I'm sticking my hand out like this is because I want to keep my core tense so that I'm just rowing with my back. If my hand drops or starts rocking around too much, chances are that I'm using my hips to torque the weight up. I don't want to do that, I just want to pull with my back. So I keep the arm out and everything's balanced. If you remember the RDL we just did, then to get into this position, you're just hinging over in the same way. Your knees slightly bent so you've got your hips the mobility to move back and the back locked up tight. Same position, just different movement. Again, don't look up, I'm looking up because that's where my stopwatch is. Right, back to the heavier kettlebell. I'm chalking my hands here. I'm still going to do the full other minute and a half of the round. I'm big wool, you know. This is a Scottish joke. You call someone big wool means that they're a heavy sweater. Get it? Anyway, this one is fast and explosive. Both these movements work the back, both the suitcase row and the clean we're doing now. But in this one, the legs are the prime mover, and the back's job is to remain tense at the bottom and then catch the weight in front of the face. I'm going to turn sideways in a second to demonstrate something important that might not be apparent if you're just looking from the front. At the top of the rep, your back should be locked up tight in a straight line. And you should just be holding the kettlebell in front of your face. If you're picking the weight up and then resting it on top of your chest, then this is cheating, which is the most important thing. But moreover, if you try and rest the kettlebell against your chest, you're going to start bending backwards and hurt your lower back. Catch it very strictly in front of the face with a locked back. Final round. This is a favourite movement of mine again. We're going to swing the kettlebell and then catch it in a snatch position. Use the momentum at the bottom of the swing to get it back up and catch it. You have to tense your core at the bottom and top of this movement. If you don't tense your core at the bottom, then the kettlebell is going to come too far back and your back will round. So you have to sit back into the swing and tense your core at the bottom. don't let the kettlebell travel too far back. And the same at the top, it's important to tense your core to stop the momentum of the kettlebell. Otherwise you're going to go flying backwards. If you're unfamiliar with this movement or catching a kettlebell in this position, practice with your body weight first or a lighter weight. It's a very strange sensation to have to tense your core at the top and catch a weight. Because once you've lifted it, the body's initial reaction is just to relax. And that's why people start flying backwards. This movement is fast and explosive. You should be doing it with a slight spring in your heels. Just so long as you can catch it safely at the top. Last exercise for the day, this is a side swing. Similar but opposite to similar but opposite, my god I'm tired. Similar to the exercise we did at the beginning, the pivot swing. Here we're swinging from side to side, except the momentum and the tension is in the serratus and the core. We're not really using our hips for this move. So your hips just stand in a straight line. I'm doing it with the kettlebell here because that's likely we've got at home, but in a second I'm going to chalk up and then do the exercise as nature intended it with a heavy club. If you don't have one of these at home, then I don't know what to tell you. You could use an umbrella with I don't know, maybe you could glue a can of beans to the end of it. You know, why not? Go crazy. I mean, the main reason I'm using the club is because I can. And I'm having my fun. And at Kettlebell Madness, that's all that really matters. That, and make sure that you're turning a full 180 degrees and staring in the direction you're facing. Okay, preview of coming attractions, and I'll see you next week.